I do have a spicy personality, right? I'm one of those people, I'm going to give it to you raw and uncut. I do know about tact and I believe in that art, but sometimes I'm not going to utilize it because sometimes you need what you need and you're going to get it how you're going to get it. You take it how you take it, feel how you feel. Because I'm going to just give you what you need. And if you don't be my friend anymore after that, that's okay. Because you'll still benefit from the lesson, even though you mad at the teacher.
You still got
So
what you need.
that's it. That's it. It's a lot of teachers that I didn't like.
Welcome to the We Got Problems podcast with co-hosts Curt G Martin, Rhonda Brown, and Caliph Johnson Sr. The one and only podcast where solutions get discussed to our community's everyday troubles. Each week, you will hear mind-blowing conversations and actionable tips and strategies that you can implement in your daily life to become more effective. We got problems and we got solutions.
Hey, you guys, welcome to the show. This is We Got Problems, the podcast. I am Curt G Martin. I'm here with my co-host, Rhonda Brown.
Hey, everybody.
My other co-host, Caliph Johnson Sr.
Hey, sir. How y'all doing?
Hey, you guys, today we got a special guest in the house. She's a podcast host herself, a teacher, a healer, and a spoken word artist. You guys welcome Passion. How are you, Passion?
I am well. Greetings and salutations.
Hey, glad to have you here. So why don't you go ahead and, Passion, tell us a little bit about yourself so the listeners can get to know you a little bit.
So the full artist name is Passion No Last Necessary. Why is there no last necessary? Because the first name says it all. I am passion and all that passion embodies. I do spoken word. I act. I do host a podcast, the Passion PSA podcast, which started from me doing PSAs on Instagram. I do a little bit of everything, but if I had to qualify myself in 5 words or less, I would say that I'm a motivational edutainer. I motivate, I educate, and I entertain all at the same time, all in the same space.
Oh, I like that. Hey, so how did you get into spoken word?
So in high school, I had a teacher in my junior year who made us keep a journal, and we could put whatever we wanted in the journal, but we had to put something in the journal periodically. And I asked her if I could write poetry. She said that's fine. And so I started writing poetry, and that was something that I continued, but not continuously. Every so often I would continue to write as I got into my adult years. And then I was watching Love Jones, and it inspired a poem. And it was at the time I didn't know that that's what it was called. I didn't know it was called spoken word, but it was just something that was better spoken. And fast forward, I don't even know, maybe let's call it a decade, I was sharing some of my poetry with people that I knew. And one of my friends, he immediately went on to Craigslist and found an open mic. And I sent my submission to the coordinator of said open mic, and she was like, "Okay, good, you'll be our feature." And I was like, "I'm would say this again because I've never attended an open mic, so I don't even know what that means to be a feature." So I went from never performing poetry ever anywhere to then being a featured artist. So I had to get to write and get quick. And then it just kind of catapulted me in that space. And because I already had, I would say because I already had a passion for acting and being in that performing arts space, it came a little bit more naturally, although the nerves came just as naturally. So the stage fright was terrible, the sweaty armpits, the knocking knees, the shaking hands, all of it. But I was able to get comfortable in the space, especially because in spoken word spaces, you have a lot of support from people who have heard your stuff. And if they really rock with you, they know your stuff. They'll come out anytime they know that you're featuring. So it made it a little bit more comfortable if I did forget, if I wasn't sure what the lines were, because I could interact with the audience more favorably. And then I released 2 albums of spoken word. And then from there, I started working on another project, which was supposed to include music, because that's what I've always been hiding from. And then that it kind of, I won't say it stalled, but it's been very, very slow. And it's taken so many different shapes and forms, from whether or not it was going to be a dual disc where it was all music on one track, on one album, and all poetry on the other. And now it's evolved to where it's going to be a 4 installment EP. And the first EP will have 2 songs and I want to say 4 poems. And each installment will be representative of something else. So it'll all lead into each other. It's basically one long story that unfolds over a course of time.
Hey, so I noticed you said too that you're a healer, right? So do you put your healing messages into your spoken word?
So everything I write for the most part is either from my experience or the experience of somebody that I know. And so what ends up happening is that because I'm writing people's stories, you have people who never felt seen before, feeling seen for the first time. B, you have people, it's perspective shifting. So everything I do is about, I don't want to say devil's advocate because I'm diligently and actively working away from using negative terminology to speak over ourselves, right? But it's about giving the other perspective, because most of us operate in a space where we only see things from our perspective. And if it doesn't align with our perspective immediately, we just don't even consider it. And so many times I have the conversation where the response is, I never thought about it that way. I never heard it that way. I never considered it from that perspective. So it's always about the perspective shift. So in a lot of the time, what we don't realize about healing is that healing generally comes after breaking. Healing doesn't come from already healed places, right? With this scar on my wrist, that's not healing. It's already healed. But there was damage here, and the damage was what had to be healed. So sometimes you have to break people's perspective. You have to break their perception, and then you can rebuild it. And that's where the healing comes in. So I will tell your story, and I may tell it in a way that makes it more palatable, and I may not, because a lot of us, what we want is sweet and sugar coated, and we want it to feel good. But if everything makes us feel good, then we avoid dealing with the things that don't make us feel good. But more of us are experiencing a lot more that's not making us feel good, and we're not sourcing healthy coping mechanisms to navigate the things that aren't making us feel good. So whether it's in spoken word, whether it's in acting, whether it's in the podcast, it's always, the objective is always to expand your thinking, to get you to this place where you're thinking beyond what you've already considered, and you're considering the perspective of other people, and to be better for yourself and for everyone else.
So I know that you do this, and if I get the day wrong, but I really, it's Song for Yourself Saturday. Is that right?
Saturday, yes.
What made you start doing that?
So I was doing PSAs, and this PSA just kept like nagging me in the back of my head, like, you need to do a PSA on this. You need to do a PSA on this. And it was, we hear love songs, right? And you go to weddings, and the music that the couple is dancing to is a love song, and we're dedicating all of these impassioned songs to someone else. And I said to myself, I wonder how people would feel if, instead of putting that much energy and that much drive and that much love into a message for somebody else, if they put that energy into a message to self. Because there's so many times when we speak poorly to ourselves, we speak poorly about ourselves. And a lot of us were taught that, right? We were taught that that's humility, to speak down on ourselves and diminish ourselves so that we don't seem like we're conceited, or we're too big on ourselves. And we don't pour that love into ourselves. We pour that love into everyone else. And then when it's not reciprocated, or if it was reciprocated for a period and then it was rescinded, now we're devastated and we can't bounce back. Because why? Because there's nothing on the inside of the vessel, because we poured everything into somebody else. So we filled up someone else's vessel, left our own vessel empty, and now we're waiting for somebody else to come and repair us. And as opposed to waiting for somebody else to repair you, why don't you intentionally take the time to start building yourself up now? Maybe nobody did it. Maybe you're 40, and for the last 40 years, nobody's ever poured into you. Well, here's the real. It was never their responsibility. It was their responsibility to build themselves. And now it's your responsibility to build yourself. So we listen to all of this music and we listen to so much of it mindlessly, right? And because it's on repeat and our minds are natural tape recorders, we start to say these words and we're saying the most negative, the most detrimental, the most horrible things. Well, these love songs that are on the radio, they're on our streaming platforms, they're so readily available. What if instead of you singing that to somebody's ashy son or raggedy daughter, what if you looked at yourself in the mirror and said, hey, guess what? I think you're fantastic. When I see you, I get butterflies in my stomach because I'm so excited about everything that you do. When I see you, it makes my heart melt because I'm just so overjoyed. Because you're the only one that you're going to always wake up next to and the one you're going to always go to bed with. You're the only one that's always there. You're the only one that knows the whole story. So you're the only one that you can never hide from. So the one person that you never have to hide from, that you never have to shift the story for, why don't you appreciate that person? Because they always with you, regardless of how raggedy you might be in these streets. They still rock with you. So why aren't you bigging up that person? Why aren't you pouring into that person? So I intentionally, for two reasons. One, to role model the behavior. And two, because like I said, the music was always the part that I needed to push past because we know the comparison is a thief of joy, right? And Instagram is a platform that's going to highlight and showcase everybody. So you got all these people that are out here and they are amazing and they can do all these vocal acrobatics. And that's not my ministry, saints. Harmony is my ministry. Praise the Lord. Okay. All that. Yeah, no, that ain't her. That ain't her. She can do the harmony though. She can't run up and down the scale, but she could walk fast, right? Now, somebody else who can do all of these acrobatics, but they can't sing in harmony with anybody else. So if the only person singing is them, they're doing fine. But if they have to sing with one other voice, they can't maintain their note. They're not shunned. They're not ostracized. So for me to break past the imperfections that might pop up in your voice when you're singing or feeling like I'm inadequate in some way because I can't do all of the things with my voice as yet. I do that for me to push past my own struggles, my own challenges, and to role model what it looks like to do mirror work. And I started doing it before I knew that there was a term for it. I didn't know it was a such thing as mirror work. So yeah.
And for y'all that don't know, she literally sits in front of a mirror and sings a song to herself.
Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful.
That's fine.
Yes.
So I have a question.
Sure.
Your name, your title, you said everything that embodies passion.
Yes.
Can you talk about it a little bit more about yourself? Like, why do you choose that title for yourself?
So I started going to karaoke years ago. And when I started going to karaoke, the karaoke host was Jamaican and had a very, very thick accent. And so when I would put my ticket up, he would announce me and I would come up to the microphone. So he would be like, Tasha, come up to the mic. And I would go up to the microphone. So I started going to karaoke in another establishment and the host was very American. And so I gave her my ticket and she was like, Tasha, come on up to the mic. And my girlfriend that I was with turned to me and said, who the hell is Tasha? And I was like, me? And she was like, you know, say all this time, I think say your name passion. And it stuck. I was like, okay. So for those of you who don't understand patois, what she said was, you know, all this time, I thought your name was Passion. And so I said, okay, so it'll be Passion from here on out. That'll be my artist name. And then what happened was that when I got into sharing my poetry, I was on a platform called Writers Cafe. I had made a friend and he was like, well, I mean, everybody's name is Passion. I know at least 3 Passions in Chicago. So like, what's going to separate you from every other passion? And I didn't know how to define that. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, like I'm Passion. Like I've always been Passion. And there were a lot of people who assumed that people called me Passion because of my personality. People call me Passion because of a Jamaican with a heavy accent. Like, I don't know the story, so we could run with it because I do have a spicy personality, right? I'm one of those people, I'm going to give it to you raw and uncut. I do know about tact and I believe in that art, but sometimes I'm not going to utilize it because sometimes you need what you need and you won't get it how you going to get it. You take it how you take it, feel how you feel. because I'm gonna just give you what you need. And if you don't be my friend anymore after that, that's okay, because you'll still benefit from the lesson, even though you mad at the teacher.
You still got what you need.
That's it. That's it. It's a lot of teachers that I didn't like. You know what I'm saying? Some of us, we have resentment toward our parents, right? But we're still capitalizing and benefiting off of lessons that we learn from them same parents that we have issues with. So you can dislike the teacher, but if you're still benefiting from the lesson, I never did you a disservice. I did your ego a disservice, and that's fine. Feel how you feel. You're entitled to that. I make no apology. That's not my job. My job is to give you the information. Your job is to process it.
Yes.
So that's why when I say I'm all that passion embodies, I love and I love, and I am all that love is. If you've ever been loved by me, you know it and you feel it and you don't forget it. But if you've ever not been loved by me, you know it and you feel it and you don't forget it.
There we go.
That's it.
You said a teacher, right? She got you writing into a journal, right? You said a teacher got you writing into a journal?
Miss Burbage.
How important is that period in your life to how it translates to where you are now?
It started something. So if I was reflecting from this moment, I would say in hindsight, she planted a seed that took a long time to germinate and grow. But then in 2009, it went from a seed that kind of was like, it was always there, but I was never doing anything with it, to something that turned into a passion for artistry and something that I was excited to explore, something I didn't feel fearful to explore. And so while I tend to be very inconsistent with journaling, and in my mind, I'll be like, I'm a journal. I'm a write this down. I'll be lying. I don't be writing nothing down. I do and a lot of like passion PSAs come in that form, because like as I think of them, I might not release them immediately, but I've recorded it, so I have it and I can refer back to it, either to release it later or to do it as a full-scale episode for the podcast. But to journal regularly, it's just not something I've ever committed to. It's something I want to commit to. So that's something I'm working on in 2022. But what Miss Burbage did for me was to open a door to really be honest about how I felt in spaces where I didn't feel comfortable to be honest about how I felt. That's what I did with my poetry. I wrote my feelings, where she always said, it doesn't matter what you write. I'm not going to grade you on what you're writing. I'm going to grade you on the fact that you are putting something in this journal consistently. And so I wrote consistently. One, to not get a failing grade, and two, because I had a lot that I was navigating in myself, and I didn't feel comfortable to talk about it at home, and I didn't feel comfortable to talk about it with too many adults. So I talked about it in that space. But even now, like that insistence, I would say all of my English teachers, all of my language arts teachers, they were very prominent. They were very, very significant to where I am now. Because if you're not aware, for most of my episodes, I do script so that I can stay on track with the subject, so I don't get too far on a tangent. And all of the writing that I had to do then in all of those different classes, in all of those different spaces, definitely prepared me to now. Because if y'all have ever scripted an episode, then you know that to write, you can write and write and write and write, and you will be writing for hours, and you will have 3 pages. And after you read them 3 pages, you will have exactly 15 minutes, if you're lucky, of content. If you're lucky. Like a 45-minute episode is roughly 9 pages, single spaced, typed out. That's a fact. I have the proof. I got all the receipts. This is part of the reason why some of the episodes be 20 minutes, because ain't nobody got time. Nobody got time to be writing these 9-page essays. Like, I didn't intend to be an essayist. I just wanted to sit down and talk to people. And so here we are.
And sometimes some of those podcasts are cool to be shorter, and that's something we struggle with, because sometimes we get a good person on that's talks, and we go an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then and then you know it's hard for people to listen to a 2-hour podcast, right? So I know a guy that has one of the biggest podcasts around. Entrepreneurs on Fire, right? And he do 20 to 35 minutes because he figured you can listen to an episode going to work, right? So you can get that whole episode in. So that's pretty cool. That's dope. So I do have another question for you. What's your favorite poem that you heard from somebody else, and what's the favorite line in that poem or that spoken word verse?
One of my favorites is That Girl. I forget the poet's name. She was on HBO Brave New Voices, and the poem was so fire. But and I'm paraphrasing the line, but she said something to the effect of, she was talking about how basically she's been replaced by this other person, right? And I can never be that girl. And she was emphasizing that girl, but she was speaking about the fact that, like, while this girl is the one that you're running after, like, you can never make an adequate copy without first consulting the blueprint. So while you going after all these replicas, you still have to consult the blueprint for what it is that you ultimately wanted. And since I am that blueprint, you clearly still want me. You just want it in a different package.
There we go. I like that.
So, but in terms of artists now, one of my absolute favorite spoken word artists, and she's one of my close friends, is Caliph the Poet. Everything that she does is super fire. Her lyricism is crazy. She's one of those people who, if I had to compare her to somebody who studies like lyricism, I would compare her to Eminem. Because Eminem he's very, very big on his wordplay. And she's very, very big on her wordplay. And she's aware of it. So when she delivers, there are a lot of times when she delivers more slowly so that the person who's listening can catch what she said. Me, on the other hand, I might not do it that way. I'm going to deliver it with the intention it's supposed to be delivered. You can catch it on the back end. We can talk about it later. We can break it down. But she will break it down so that it's slower, so that whoever's listening can catch everything. And even sometimes they still miss it because it be deep. She's my favorite. She's like top 5, and I'd say top 2.
Okay, so you're talking about other people's work. What is your favorite one that you do, and can we hear
it? My favorite poem. Oh wow. My favorite poem that I wrote. I don't have that one memorized. That one is Salt. And that, I would say, I've only performed it once because it hasn't been memorized still. In terms of ones that I do have memorized, I would say Deja Vu is one of my favorites, and Discernment. Now, can I recall all of Discernment? I don't know. That was from my first album. That's a fan favorite because that's a love poem. And it's funny because the two of them are almost like bookends, because this is like the beginning and this is the end. Deja Vu is definitely at the end of it. Like, yeah, I used to love you, or I almost loved you, but I didn't waste my time with it. Let's see. Deja Vu. You are the best memory of the worst mistake I almost repeated. So I broke up with you before we met. Wrote the epilogue before we dialogued because there was nothing for us to discuss. I realized that my attraction was to your packaging, and the prettiest packages are usually reserved for the products that ain't worth shit. So you were dismissed. Weren't allowed to enlist in the How to Love Me training program. Whited out your name before you wrote it on the orientation attendance list. Please don't misconstrue this as the rantings of a bitter bitch. I saw the gestation of our potential relations having major complications, so I put myself on bed rest before the pregnancy could become high risk, arrested the development of our love's fetus before mitosis, Let XX just be a size marker or stutter step when writing, and XY just precede Z, because my 2X plus your XY would equal remedial mathematics for the special ed kids. The worst mistake, I almost repeated, you are infatuation wearing love's favorite cologne, but lust can't deny you as her eldest son. You have her eyes. Tell Miss Jezebel I said hello. My worst identity crisis, distorted vision, recorded image of what in love could look like if in life was in love, if in love was you with me, if you with me wasn't dog and heat, if in me was realization of fallacy, if you were a memory of what had only happened to me in the possibilities realm of my psyche, psyched me into fairy tale daydreams, jolted me back to understanding what faith means, reminded me that when you cohabitate, your in-laws are bound to come by for a visit, and Lucifer's summer staycation at our house showed me to love within limits or die within minutes. The best memory. Sorry, sincerely, I'm reading backwards, closing salutations from unwritten Dear Jane letters, erased unwritten apologies from paper that never caused trees to be wasted lives, wasted no thought, wishing what was here was gone and what was gone was here. Turn your regret for wrongdoing into gratitude for a chance not to fail. Finally realized that my arms are too short to box with God, and your frame is too slight to fully embrace my love. So I forgave you before I hated you. You are old regrets manifest as second chances, a reminder that lessons learned only bear repeating when action becomes static or goes without application. We have done this before, and we weren't successful the last time or the time before that. Did this dance and still haven't become stars. Inserted key into ignition and still couldn't move the car. B-Fry, your STNs, but we're still just two halves of a broken heart. We're better apart, better moving separately, but you are still my favorite memory.
Oh wow,
I like that.
that's beautiful. Yeah, yeah,
Thank
That's
yeah.
you.
fire, Queen. Oh man,
That
poetry is
poem is
so.
so funny because when I finished, like the minute I finished writing it, the person that inspired it called me, and it was like, what you doing? I was like, nothing, just finished writing a poem. And they were like, let me hear it, and I spit it, and they were like, is that about me? I was like,
That's
it
pretty
was like,
good.
Spirit was like, she talking about you, bruh.
Okay, like it's funny you say that because what you say, like in the music, right? Like it's so much pollution out there. I call it pollution because it ain't worth listening to. I'm really big because in the morning I take the boys to school and my daughter as well, and I'm really big on making sure they're not listening to that shit in the morning because I know in the afternoon after you had a long day you can get into it, and we got into 707. 707. We listen to poetry now, so every morning we go in and listen to poetry, and it just sets a different tone. Like, what is your perspective on how important keeping the arts in the school is for the kids? Like, I
Super.
really don't think I don't think we celebrate it enough, and I know we don't talk about it enough. So, poetry in the school being taught. What's your view on that?
all of the arts all of the arts are super significant because they are art is one and art in any form is one of the healthiest creative outlets for anyone, right? Painting is huge. Coloring is huge. This is why we have adult coloring books. This is why we have adults that got crayons in their house, even if they only have a blank piece of paper. It is a healthy creative outlet. There are so many other outlets that people are utilizing, but they're the expression is still limited. Like there are a lot of people who love video games, right? And there's nothing wrong with playing video games. However, you're still utilizing somebody else's outlet, and you might be shooting something up in the game, and you might be doing something destructive in the game. But like, what coping mechanisms are you developing? What conflict resolution skills are you developing? When you're writing, you're able to write some of what you feel. And if at the end of what you've written, you realize like this is really toxic, you can always burn it. You can always tear that up. And you don't have to put your hands on anybody else's child. And you don't have to necessarily put your words on somebody else. But you can write everything that you feel and then get it out your system. You can draw what you feel. When you have somebody's child beating on some drums, I'd much rather have a child making all this noise beating on some drums than beating on somebody else, because I ain't got to pay no bail money to get you out of jail for beating on for the drums. You understand what I'm saying? I might have to bail you out if you go and beat up on somebody else's child. That's a real thing. I feel like there are so many people who tell the story about how art saved their life. How could we not realize that art is so important? How could we not realize when music is in everything that we do? When you look at the comparison between music and math and you see that there is an exact overlap, how could you not see the importance? Even when you're doing poetry, when they teach you different styles of writing poetry. Well, in order to understand pentameter, you would still need to initially know the prefix penta, which means 5. So even if you didn't know what pentameter meant, if you know that there's a 5 and you know that there's a meter, then somehow along the line, you're going to figure out that there's a 5 count somewhere in this. There's math. So it directly correlates with the subjects that we're actually studying. It correlates with English. It correlates with history, especially because you have so many history book writers that want to do this revisionist version of history, right? It's very colorful, the way they tell the story, these bloodbaths, right? These murders and the destruction of people's entire people's entire lands, people's entire communities. It's so beautiful and so poetic, the way they tell these stories. And for somebody like me, I was just as gullible. I'm like, oh, it was so sweet. And then adulthood happened, right? And then I decalcified my pineal gland. I'm like, oh, wow, no. This is terrible, right? But I feel like there's so much to be gained, to be gleaned, and to be benefited from all of the arts. Movement in dance, and even athleticism is artistic in its own right. It's necessary. It's vital. It's vital on every level, because everybody that's doing it at some point in their life, I guarantee you, it was a lifesaver for them. It was something that kept them from doing something that was detrimental or harmful to somebody else.
Wow, yeah, that's deep. Hey, boy, that's crazy. You came up with that, Trash. That was actually a question I wanted to ask, but that's really cool. So for a young kid that's trying to get into spoken word, what would you think is the most challenging thing to creating a spoken word masterpiece, or just creating something of their own?
I think that spoken word in and unto itself is its own art form, separate from poetry. And I think that everybody needs to be able to make that differentiation. There are some people who go to open mics and they read their poetry. While you may be a poet, that doesn't make you a spoken word artist. Just like every spoken word artist is not a slam poet. There's a difference. A slam poet they are writing poetry and it is performative, but it is still competition. So there is a format that they have to follow, whereas a spoken word artist doesn't necessarily have to follow any format, but there is an art to the delivery of it, right? It's the person who says, little Miss Muffet sat on her tuffet, eating her curds and whey. Along came a spider and sat down beside her and scared Miss Muffet away. Thank you for your time. Beloved, you a poet. You a poet, right? But for the person to come up and say, please forgive her for not knowing how to accept a compliment. The only compliment she ever received were gas, head sweller, so this one or that one could smash. That's somebody who's coming to deliver something very, very different. And when it was written, it wasn't necessarily written solely for you to read it. It was written to be delivered in a spoken format. It was delivered to be, it was written to be delivered performatively, so that you can hear the intention, so you don't have to interpret the intention. So I think that if you want to anything performative, you have to study the art, right? Because right now it's a lot of people, praise the Lord, saints, there's a lot of people that are saying that they are actors. And they are visual
acting.
representations on screen, right? I'm trying to be nice. They are people who have memorized lines, and they're standing in front of a camera, but they are not actors. Like there's an art form to acting. For you to be able to be a different character, the same person showing up as different people every time, that is when you are an actor. Me booking you because this is how you are in real life, and so I just needed you to bring your energy to this character, that doesn't necessarily make you an actor. Leonardo DiCaprio, he shows up differently in every role. He shows up as the character that you're supposed to see. So every time you see him on screen, you see the character that you're supposed to see. Tom Hanks, he's going to show up as the character that you're supposed to see. Those are actors. Everybody on Instagram ain't no actor. They not. And everybody showing up to an open mic is not a spoken word artist. It's people that, and there are people who want to be really badly. And so they write things, and they're writing things that are superbly deep. And I could remember being at an event, and I was like, so I called my homegirl over, and I was like, is this deep? And she was like, Passion, because what you not going to do. And I'm like, no, for real, I need to know, because I don't know what he's talking about. So is it deep? Because if it's deep, I want to understand. So can you tell me what he's talking about? So I asked my other friend, and my other friend, like, he wasn't no better. He just like, he turned purple laughing. I'm like, y'all are real hateful. Like, I'm really trying to understand what's happening here, because this man is really, he's going in, and he got choreography with what he's saying, and his voice is coming up here, and it's coming down. And I just want to know if it's deep. Like, I want to know what he's talking about, because I don't get it. I'm lost.
And so a two-part question kind of to that. Do you think I know you said you put an album out, so putting music to it, is spoken word could be a form of hip hop?
So the initial when rap came into the mainstream, it originated as spoken word, and then there was spoken word put over a beat, and then you had rap music. A lot of what's considered hip hop today is pupu kaka, right?
And that's why I brung it up, because I feel like spoken word should be on some of these beats that I hear, or tailor some of these beats to some spoken words, because we were talking about that before you even got on the call about rap music, and we were saying that the beat is catchy, their cadence is catchy, but they're not saying anything. So if you put some,
not of substance. They're saying something, but it ain't substance.
It's by design, right? Because there's so many levels to that, right? So you have the vibrations, right? For people who understand vibration, and they recognize the power, and they recognize like where we're vibrating and how we're vibrating and what we need to do to stay on which frequency. We understand that we're all born in this base vibration, right? And so that is the most resonant with all of us, which is why negativity, we find entertainment in negativity, we find joy and pleasure in negativity, because that's where we all start. And it's up to us to ascend, right? It's up to us to try to climb higher and come out of that negativity to the higher vibrations, right? The highest vibration is love. So we have to do the work to get to this place where we're vibrating higher, right? But if I put a negative message over a negative beat, and I keep a negative vibration in constant motion, then I keep you in a negative space. So now, because you're always in this negative frequency, you behave negatively by design. You don't even realize it. It's unintentional, and you feel like, well, I didn't do anything wrong. However, if I start putting positive messages over positive beats, I start using binaural beats, I start using 432 hertz and 532 hertz and 440 432. I can't remember all of the different frequencies, but if I start using these type of frequencies with my music, right, because that was also intentional, they shifted the hertz frequency that music was being played over so that people would stay in these lower resonating spaces. When I start putting positive messages, two things happen because so many people are so conditioned to listen to negativity and they're so responsive to negativity, they shy away from it, right? And I talked about that in an episode. I don't know if I've released that episode yet, but I did talk about the fact that you have artists right now who aren't even pleased with the music that they're putting out, but they're putting it out because that's what people will buy. Not because that's what they really want to put out, because what they really want to talk about is something better, something positive, something uplifting. But that's not what the machine that's behind them is pushing, and that's not what their fan base is buying into. However, it's up to us to shift the conditioning. So it's y'all having a podcast and we're talking about something of substance, me having a podcast where I'm talking about something of substance, me doing albums and intentionally changing the energy that I'm putting. Like with my first album, it was very intentional. My first and my second album, it was very intentional that there was no music behind the poetry because people love distraction and they want to hear music. And there's so many people that's like, you want to listen to the music, but you're not focused on the words, right? This is why you are like, oh, I can't stand the way these dudes be disrespecting women, but this first song that comes on your playlist is like, fuck these hoes and fuck these bitches. You listening to the same music that you say you can't stand. Make it make sense.
Yeah. You know, for me is I hate being in a space where as soon as a song come on, there's a woman that bends over backwards. Like that's the first thing you hear. Like come on now, we need to be able to chill and talk. Like it ain't about all of that all the time, right? Like
We gotta
so I feel you.
recondition though. We gotta
Yeah.
recondition, and that's an intentional action, and most of us are not living intentional lives.
But see, that's what they want us to vibrate on. That's the frequency they really want us on because it keeps us in the Jerry Springer mentality and the Maury Povich mentality to the point where if we keep on putting this low vibrating imagery in front of them enough, then we can actually keep them asleep long enough that we can steal it all. So, I had a question. I really just kind of want to know some of the things that you're involved in that you're doing and you would like to highlight, like some of the programs and stuff that you help out with and anything that you want to bring light to.
Right now, the main thing that I am focused on is the podcast. That is consuming a lot of my time. And one, because I host it by myself. And two, because I also do everything else with it by myself. So I do the editing, I do the producing, I do the lighting, the writing, anything related to that podcast, I'm doing it. So it consumes a lot of my time, and I'm still currently a full-time employee. So that in and unto itself is its own juggle. And then I have a whole bunch of work going on at home. So because this consumes so much of my time, my focus is to offer as much guidance for self-help as I can in the interim. And I won't even say in the interim, but soon I will be enrolling because I'm actually deciding on what school I'm going to enroll in. I am actually going to take an accredited course because a lot of the courses out there, they can give you a certification, but it's not necessarily from an accredited school for life coaching. I did not want to go into the therapy space, and that was intentional because I am too empathic, and it took me a long, long time to not take on other people's things. So in order for me to be able to hear what you're talking about, give you some sage wisdom, give you some sound advice, and then let you deal with what you need to deal with without me going home and crying your tears and trying to figure out, oh my God, like how's he gonna get through it? And because I am that person, you know what I'm saying? I'm gonna take your cloak and wear it, and then now I have to get under the bed because I am wearing your depression and you're fine, but you're not coming to retrieve me from under the bed. Like, you know what I'm saying? There's no reciprocity in that. It's like, well, now that you taking it, I'm good. So good looking out, friend. So it's that. It's working on. If I'm working on a program, it's a program of completing the accredited certification to actually be a life coach because I'm already like a creative consultant for free. Like I do a lot for free. I do a lot of giving of myself for free. And it's like, everybody wants you to do it for free. but at what point am I supposed to be able to sustain myself? Like I have all of these gifts and skills and abilities. I should be able to sustain myself with them. And if you're unwilling to pay for it, that's fine. But I'm unwilling to keep sacrificing myself for jobs where I don't feel I should be. And even where the hiring parties are saying, you have no business here. And it's not, you have no business here because you're not welcome here. It's, you have no business here because this is way beneath you. I've heard that from people who have hired me into positions like, what are you doing here? I'm paying bills. I'm staying housed because homelessness doesn't appeal to me. And I don't like to feel hungry. I like opening the cabinet and the refrigerator and seeing food. That's what I'm doing here. But I have to step boldly past that. So
Where can we find it?
Go
Where
again.
where can we find your podcast at? Where can the people find it? You gotta highlight that. You said if this is it, like where can the people find you? What time? When do you post? Like where is the Instagram for it? Let us know everything about it. If it's taking your energy, let us promote that as highlighted as we can get it.
So thank you for that. That is much appreciated. My podcast Instagram is Passion PSA Podcast. At Passion PSA Podcast. My hub page, which more people know, which is all inclusive of everything, that is at They Call Me Passion. That's both on Instagram. I have yet to get on Twitter. I've been dipping and ducking and dodging Twitter forever. I have a Facebook. I very seldom am on Facebook. I find that I have more interaction on Instagram, and that's why I stay more on that platform. I am expanding more on TikTok, but I haven't fully expanded yet. I'm also at They Call Me Passion on TikTok. If you are looking for the visual for the podcast, it is on YouTube. My YouTube channel is What One Woman Does, because my business name is What One Woman Does Productions and Publications LLC. So it is What One Woman Does Network. That is my YouTube channel. The Passion PSA Podcast is the playlist to look for if you're looking for the podcast. I am in season 2. Season 1 was 12 episodes. Season 2, I wanted it to be 15 episodes. I'll see if I go further than that. I am still working out the kinks of getting season 1 fully uploaded to the audio platforms, which I know that podcasts are predominantly audio and secondarily visual. However, listening to people who don't know what they talking about got me hustling backwards. So now I have to reverse engineer and get the audio up. So there are a lot of things that I'm working out with that, but it will be available. The first 4 episodes were available on several of the audio podcasts, but not all of them. And that's because I just, me and technology, some days we don't agree with each other. And when I was trying to work that out, we weren't with each other.
Hey, so Passion, man, we really appreciate you coming. What we're gonna do now is, Rhonda, you have any closing words you want to lead the people with?
I want to thank you, Passion, for coming. Thank you for doing your spoken word. That I love that. Look, y'all, follow your dreams. Don't stop, no matter what it is.
All right, thank you, Rhonda. Caliph, Mr. Johnson, what do you want to lead the people with?
Peace. Oh man, thank you so much, Queen. That was really an amazing interview. I thank you for your time. I thank you for all that you're doing, and I can't wait to really get on promoting your podcast, because I'm really behind anybody who's doing anything positive for our community, and your information is golden. So thank you.
Passion, you have anything you want to lead the people with?
So gratitude to all of you for opening the space and allowing me to be here, being receptive to all that I had to share, being receptive and open for the time that I didn't have to feel rushed. That's always appreciated. Be mindful of what you're consuming, whether it is visual, whether it is audio, whether it is ingested, be mindful of what you're consuming. Find whichever art appeals to you the most and utilize that as a creative outlet. It is an effective coping mechanism. Don't ever let anyone tell you that it's not. Use it, because for everyone who can't afford therapy, who can't afford counseling, who doesn't have insurance, you can get crayons in Dollar Tree and coloring books.
There we
And
go.
it's going to help you. It's going to help you get some of this energy out and be open to good, healthy conversation, because there's somebody who is listening and somebody who appreciates what it is that you have to say. Also be open, be coachable. So when you want to speak, but you're not necessarily a public speaker, that somebody who is a public speaker can give you good guidance to get you to that place.
I appreciate it. Again, I want to thank you for coming. Really appreciate you. I love your spoken word. And I want to say to the people, hey, let's get more spoken word artists out there, and let's turn some of y'all into them hip hop artists so we can have something in hip hop that's telling us something of real substance. You guys, because we got problems and we also have solutions, and we out.
From the team at CRC Empire, we want to thank you for listening. To stay connected with us, like, share, and subscribe to the We Got Problems podcast. You can find us on social media platforms at Curtis Martin 247, at Rhonda Wrights Official, and at the_trash_vegan_. We got problems and we got solutions.